It's a huge pleasure for me to introduce a man I had the pleasure of interviewing for Procurement magazine a few months ago. It was one of those interviews and calls where you feel like you've been on the call for about an hour and then you realise you're meant to be doing an interview because you've just got chatting about stuff. He's that kind of guy, huge experience, a great many stories to tell. Some he can tell publicly, some that he can't, but sure to be interesting. I'm delighted to welcome Stuart Farrell, Chief Procurement Officer, AllPoints Fibre Networks, to the stage. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you to Neil and Glenn for the invite to be here this morning to talk to you all. Over the next 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to try and tell you a story. I'm going to try and share with you the journey that we've been on at AllPoints Fibre over the last 18 months. Interesting, I've been to a number of conferences the last few weeks, and everyone tells me about what I need to do next. What I'd like to try and do is try and tell you about what I've already done, which has been quite a huge transformation in terms of our business, as I say, over the last 18 months. Looking at procurement transformation, but also how do we deliver effective change. The single biggest thing that I found in terms of our program that we've just been through is the people change. So I've introduced lots of technology, lots of AI, lots of really clever smarts, but actually the change of a downsizing team with the integration of technology is really difficult to do. It's extremely emotional with the team that you build, but actually it's something I think that is going to come upon us all over the next 3 or 4 years as we embrace technology even more. So where did we start? Well, first of all, let me tell a little bit about the company that I work for, which is, as I say, AllPoints Fibre Network Limited. We're backed and supported by Octopus, and we brought together 4 group companies on the 8th of February 2023, having had them all run independently for the previous 3 or 4 years. So you can imagine when I met the rest of the procurement folks from the other opcos, what became quite evident was we were all buying the same fleet from different vendors at different prices. We're all buying the same IT from different vendors at different prices. We were all buying the same mobile phone contracts, which we talked about yesterday with Ninian, from the same vendor for different prices. And externally, we didn't look very smart. So what we did was we made an announcement, as I say, on 8th of February 23 to bring the group companies together. And with my experience of being in Vodafone Procurement Company previously, it was a bit of an open door in terms of how do we bring all of this different purchasing power together to basically derive a better value for the business and ultimately derive value for the customer. So we kicked off a project called Project Springboard, aptly named. We spent money with marketeers to come in and think about that, as I'm sure you all do. But what we found was it was supposed to be a springboard forward from the previous opcos we'd all been in to be a bigger, better, stronger business going forward. I'm delighted that's what we've done over the last 18 months. But as I mentioned before, the single biggest thing for me with my procurement team was to engage with the people and remind them about real life. So something I'm extremely passionate about, and I'm also humbled that I've got some of my guys watching online today, is that I really care about my team. It bothers me that we had to make some tough decisions to downsize that team. You know, if I think about the old OpCo team that I ran of 12 of us, we very quickly grew as we brought the companies together to 56. And that spanned enablement, category procurement, data and governance, category procurement, purchasing, fleet, property, and supply chain logistics, which is quite a mandate to take on as the group CPO. But all the while, what was really important was to acknowledge the different stories and the journeys that each of my team have been on to get us to that point, and acknowledge the skills and the abilities that they'd got to take us forward to the next stage. So it was really important to me that we, at all points, reminded ourselves of our history and our roots. So as I say, bringing together Jurassic, Swish, Giganet and Cuckoo is not a small feat. We currently have 500,000 homes passed with civil construction in the ground, full fibre wholesale network ability. We've got contracts with BT Wholesale, BT Openreach and City Fibre. So we can now reach 17 million customers across the UK in terms of homes passed. But for the first sort of 6 or 12 months, there was a lot of talk, and I'm sure you've had this if you've been engaged in conversations or amalgamations of group companies, where everyone reminds them about how it used to be in the old days. This is really important for me because it was such a key thing to remind ourselves of our history, but we've also had to move on from it. So shameless plug, and Glenn won't thank me for this, but I'm a Liverpool supporter. That normally splits the tip. We're top of the league. The reason I raise that is that I know the history of my football club. I know about Bill Shankly. I know about Jurgen Klopp. I know about Bob Paisley. But I don't need to talk about it all the time. But I'm extremely proud of where we've come from. And that's what we've tried to do with the team, is instill a sense of pride, but try to move forward as one team. So we spent a lot of time, about 15, 16 weeks, going around the country, trying to understand with the team what the different successes were across the opcos. Because instantly you always think, well, we did this miles better than you did, right? And I've got 4 lots of that. So what we tried to do is capture those, but also embrace the differences and not be afraid of recognizing that for some people it's very, very different and also quite hard. Culturally, location, brand, a lot of these guys and girls joined small, local fibre providers, and then when we came together, they became a 1,400 strong unit. Not everybody signed up for that. So we've been through 2 or 3 rounds of tough conversations and downsized the team. So as I said before, the procurement team was 56. I should be proud of this from a procurement point of view, but we got it down to 34. We then went down to 27, and we've just gone to 18. But that's only been able to happen by the integration of technology and basically taking that technology and making us more efficient. Really important when you bring in 4 different teams together is to listen to them. Don't just hear what they say. I've probably got more Microsoft OneNotes on my PC, having driven Exeter, Yorkshire, Banbury, been all over the UK meeting the team. And it's really important that we captured each one of the teams that I met thoughts before we decided what that operating model was going to be. This is a graphic that reminds me quite worryingly of being about 5 years old and being taken to the doctors, if any of you are old enough, to try to spot the number in the dots. This is what this felt like. I never saw the number, by the way, in the dots. So that's why I couldn't fly for the RAF. But anyway, interestingly, trying to see patterns when everybody does everything so differently was really hard. We identified 4 key areas that we all thought would be quick wins. We've just finished the 4th quick win 15 months later by amalgamating the fleet and sorting out our group insurance. My group CEO and group CFO were like, come on, Stu, how hard can this be? What we've realised is, you know, the de-fleeting of the business, the rebranding of the fleet, the downsizing of the property estate from 26 properties down to 4 takes time. Why? Because we're working with partners. We also needed to update the structures. We needed to make sure that we had the right structure in place to be able to support the business going forward. And that meant putting in place a really detailed and fully collaborative operating model that covered 6 main areas. From enablement, thinking about sanctions, onboarding, director checks, bank account details, and what have you, run by a wonderful lady called Debbie Lowe in my team. Then we had the category buying team. Aaron Blythe runs that for me today. That basically is a category-based buying team that look after networks, so passive and active. So we buy everything from plastic ducting that goes in the ground to very expensive data center hardware to make this thing work. We then got in-live contract management, run by a wonderful guy called Phil Garding. This team is basically managing our top 32 key strategic suppliers with whom we spend about 82% of our annual spend. I've then got Rob Home, looks after our governance and data. We're all a bit nerdy in that team because I see myself as part of that team, but we get very excited about things like the Bank of England interest rate and basically inflation and the cost of steel and copper and cement and whatever, because people don't realise that those micro changes on the scale of what we're buying basically needs to underpin budgets, for next year. As I said, I look after the fleet, so I've got the fleet and the property run by Justin Doolin, based out of Exeter, and then our supply chain logistics, which we've actually outsourced and done a great deal with Westco Annexter on a 5-year outsource contract, is run by Dave Knowles. So we had to make sure that we built a very inclusive strategy, but also had a very clear roadmap of where we're going to go. Now, roadmap was clear. Milestones might have been a bit aggressive. as I said earlier, because you always go into it thinking, right, we'll get rid of the property, we'll sort the fleet out, we'll go to one standard CPE in the home. We still haven't done that yet. We'll amalgamate all the mobile phone contracts. We'll sort out silly things like we'll sort out lanyards. We'll all have the same lanyards. We'll sort out the PPE that each of the installation engineers. This takes absolutely ages. And I think one of my biggest key learnings from the session, from doing this, was to maybe set more realistic timescales, which is easier said than done with a group board who want everything done. And you want to do it tomorrow, as I said, to make sure we're supporting the customer. So we spent a lot of time after we'd done the first stage of discovery of going out and seeing what the guys and girls had done across the opcos to then try to build a really clear vision and put in place OKRs, so objectives and key results, as to what we needed to do over the next 3 years to make us successful, which included going right back to the start and writing every process again. Aaron's watching this, so we'll know this. We said we'd do 7. We've only done 6. We had a bit of a change in the PMO team, which has caused us a bit of a kerfuffle, but we'll get that back on track and we'll be fine. We needed to make sure that we basically could have one business, one system, one team. That we could ultimately grow together. A bit corny, but we could grow together. We ultimately tried to learn together. And that's emotional learning as much as physical learning. We've grown as a team. I've got a team now of 18 people with over 230 years of procurement experience. And they are, and hope they will be, the best I possibly could hire in the market today. But each of them have their own story. They all have their partners. They all have their houses, their kids to feed, their parents, their whatever else it might be. And it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I basically care for them, coach them, and support them as best I can, which, as I say, has been really tough over the last 2 years as we change. But we're now in a point where we've got a really solid foundation and we can build together. So we have a very strong view of what the next 12 or 18 months looks like. I sat with Aaron and Phil on Friday in Reading and we set out what the next 2 years looks like, because as a big Test cricket fan, I'm very clear that through this test we will be better. I'm sure Neil will ask me about taking questions, but I thought I'd leave you with just a few key points, because the presentation is not thousands of facts. It's more about a story of how we got to where we are. But we have delivered some amazing results. Safety is my #1 priority, which sometimes confuses people when I do that conversation with partners. So safety being our #1 priority means that on my OKRs and as part of my annual review with the group CFO and also our annual bonus targets, maintaining a fatality-free environment across what is a very heavy civil construction industry, putting fibre ducting into the ground and managing some very interesting critical national infrastructure, that's a really key target for us. And I'm delighted that we maintained last financial year a fatality-free environment. It would be remiss of me not to share with you, though, that about 4 weeks ago we did have a fatality on site. One of the subcontractor guys unfortunately had a heart attack, which had been, I think, seen and been noted by doctors previously. So we have had a very difficult last 4 weeks with that supplier and rallying around his wife and children to make sure they're all safe and got everything they need to be able to be supported over this dreadful time. Completed the full outsource of logistics supply chain, as I mentioned, another real highlight. In one of the opcos, we'd outsourced all of our supply chain logistics to Westco Annexter, who I mentioned before, big American logistics and distribution business. But what we actually found was, again, back to timelines, we thought, right, in 6 months, we'll bring all this together and outsource. We've now outsourced $37 million worth of hardware, passive and active. We've got 17 different locations across the country that we've brought together into 3. And we've also cheaped, passed across from us to Westco Annexter 11 of our full-time folks. Which again, when I think about the skills and the ability that some of the team have been through with me over the past 18, 19 months, I'm really proud to say to you all that the 6 guys and girls that have left us over the last 2 to 3 months have all gone on to get bigger and better roles. So much so that in an interview, when they're telling the story of what we've done over the last 2 years, the interviewer, so the procurement director or the HR director, have actually said, and I quote, "We're a little bit worried you might be bored here because of what you've done with Stu over the last 2 years." But again, that shouldn't diminish away from the fact that we've still needed to do that effective change and transformation. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Stuart. As ever, a wonderful storyteller. Much appreciated. We can go to any quick questions if we have any from the room. I know I have some. We do at the front. Here we go. If we could keep this relatively short and sharp, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Yep, sure. So you talked about safety standards. I was just curious, how do you continuously vet suppliers? So often you vet them at the beginning and then you have your periodical checks. What happens if they slip in between?
Well, we hope they don't slip, because otherwise then it appears on there in terms of a lost time incident. So we use a really stringent HSE metric about managing lost time instances in the field, but that covers all of our supply chain, not just the civil construction guys that are digging. We undertake 20 to 25 spot checks a year, where my folks will turn up unannounced and not only check for safety in terms of the safety in the building or on site, but also modern slavery, ESG. Basically, we try to do 25, which is part of our supplier code of conduct and our ethics report that we sign and write off with our group CEO to make sure that we are physically going and seeing it. It's really easy to ask a supplier to send you through. Can you send me through your latest certs? Can you send me through your latest stats? Can you send me your ISO certification? And I'm not saying that's easy to attain, by the way, but it's relatively painless for me. It's like basically saying to Tracy and Debbie, have we got the stats through for GE Services and Foresight? Yeah, we've got it. And in my mind, I can think, done. We've kind of gone one step further in terms of the commercial contract management process that we've put in place. We try to drop in on 20 to 25 suppliers a year to physically see it. Now, we sometimes catch them out, which is good in a way, because I'd rather that than have my folders in SharePoint all updated with everyone's certs, but I'm not really sure if I've got a handle on what's going on the ground. Get out into the field is the short answer I'd give you.
Okay. Any further questions from the room? We do. We'll make this the last one, and then we'll be moving on. Here we go.
That's Neil's way of saying I'm answering too long. So carry on.
I was being diplomatic.
You were very good. Don't worry.
Congratulations on
Thank
the
you.
transformation
Thank
journey.
you.
Very impressive. My question is around how were you able to keep up the enthusiasm and engagement of your people when it was clear from the milestones that you set out that many of them will be released over time?
That's a great question. Let me share with you a quick 30 seconds. Sorry, Neil. I don't think I've ever sat in the last 3 individual consultation meetings that I've sat in and cried quite so much. The engagement that we've got with our team, up until the latest round of changes, we had a plus 46 EMPS score in procurement against the company average of plus 0. No, it's 0, right? I think that's about leadership. I think that's about, I called out each one of my direct reports. That goes down to my leadership team. But it also goes down to having a clear vision of why we're doing what we're doing. You know, if I think about the last conversation I just had with Rob, which is a guy, again, who's watching online, you know, to have changed the way we do our data and governance for the entire group has been something that's taken Rob, Liam, and Saeed nearly 15 months. But what's been awesome for me is that they've not only done it, but they've done it knowing that in 18 months' time, when we automate, they won't need to be there. That's hard, really hard. Now, I'm delighted we've redeployed 2 of the lads into finance because they're clever guys, they'll be fine. But continual communication, coaching, and telling them the truth. I'm very conscious we're being filmed, so for the purposes of the tape, I have sometimes overshared with my team, which has been put to me by the group exco of Stu, the guys don't need to know all this. Well, actually, I've found that by telling them more than I probably would have in the past has kept them more engaged and aware of why we're doing what we're doing. It's not happening to them. They're part of that change. Really hard to do, though. Plenty of tears.
This is also why I like questions from the room, because it's the questions that I wouldn't ask, I wouldn't think to ask. So thank you very much for that. And we do appreciate your honesty, the full visibility on how these things work. And if you allow me a shameless plug, if you want to read more about the journey that Stuart and your colleagues have been on, take a look at the full profile interview we did with Stuart in Procurement Magazine a few months ago. I can't remember which issue. It was a few months ago, but go through the website and you'll find it there. So anyway, a warm thank you for Stuart Farrell.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.